Stafford's ancient house was built in the late 1500s for the Dorrington family. This Tudor townhouse is believed to be the largest surviving timber-framed house in England. In the past, the house has been a residential home, a Civil War prison for officers, a school, and a home to an antique shop. It's the 17th most haunted place in the UK, according to a 2020 survey, with doors opening and closing on their own, and the ghost of a woman passing through a wall, sighted regularly. It's said to be haunted by William Mason, who owned shops in the building in 1890. In the 1960s, a party of American visitors claimed to be guided around the house by the resident shopkeeper. On returning with friends, they discovered the house to be an uninhabited ruin. When shown a picture of William Marson, who had shops within the High House in 1890, I've got William Marson and William Mason, I'm not sure. The Americans claimed that he had been their guide. A writing desk in the Victoria Room apparently locks and unlocks itself, and voices are heard throughout the old building. The ghost of a young child and an eerie elderly lady in a rocking chair have both been sighted in the over 500-year property, with police even being called out to supernatural incidents. Keeper of the local asylum, reputed to haunt the High House, Dr. Mathson, once manifested during daylight hours on one occasion. The ghost featured in the local press in 1973 after Ian Taverner volunteered to spend a week in the house, armed with a cutlass, just in case. On one occasion, an officer arrived and was told there was an intruder inside, but when people described the person, they were describing a gentleman known to the police who'd passed away a few years previously. I don't think I ever went into the High House, although I may have visited the shop which it contains, but regularly would have the Saturday buffet at the Bear opposite. 400-year-old Swan Hotel on Greengate Street has witnessed a lot of history pass through Stafford. Stories are rife about mysterious tunnels linking the cellars with St Mary's Church, and indeed Stafford Castle. It's said that a drowning pool for women charged with witchcraft once stood on this site. There's also a priest hall built at the time of the Jacobean Rebellion, and when it was excavated, bottles and bones were found. In the late 1940s and 50s, the manager's family reported regular sightings of a female ghost. This so-called white lady was seen again in the 1970s in the manager's bedroom. He woke up with a jolt one night to see the ghost standing beside his bed. She's still wandering the corridors. One living chef was so disturbed by her presence that he quit his job. There have been sightings of a strange youth with a record box walking along Tythebourne Road. Should you spot him, remind him of the date and that he now lives in Indonesia. The soup kitchen dates from the 16th century, situated in the old quarter of the town on Church Lane. The staff may be friendly, but the ghostly resident is a little more on the volatile side. The soup's kitchen's ghost, affectionately known as Ethel, certainly lets her feelings be known. It is said that she is responsible for turning the hot plates on and off, and for objects that often fly off the shelves. An apparition witnessed on several occasions. She also passes through the entrance hall where the old dresser used to stand. The Superbowl building is on part of land belonging to the old infirmary, which housed the morgue. A senior mechanic who prepares the bowling lanes could hear mumbling as if there was a group of people following him from lane to lane. He was so frightened he waited by the main entrance until someone else arrived. In another instance, a cleaner claimed to be a hanging man was plainly visible in Quasar. Outside the walls of Stafford Gaol was frequently the scene of public executions, attracting immense crowds to the public executions, who travelled great distances. Crowds of 10,000 were not unusual. Not all were executed were murderers. In fact, half of them put to death for forgery, horse or sheep stealing, burglary and highway robbery. So there's bound to be some heartbroken souls hanging around. In 1856, more than 3 times the usual crowd gathered for the execution of the notorious Dr. William Parner, the Prince of Poisoners. The last execution took place in 1914. Stafford Gatehouse Theatre is reputed to have its own ghost, a lady that is witnessed several times on the main stairs of the theatre. Nothing is known of her identity or connection with the theatre, but the cleaning staff prefer not to work alone in the main auditorium. The Shire Hall has a ghost named Claude, who's said to walk through the library. His territory has been known to extend from the Shire Hall through the library itself and down to the Tourist Information Centre. Nothing is known of its origins, and Claude remains a mystery. J.D. Wetherspoon's located in Bridge Street. The spirits aren't only in your glasses. The pub was an old cinema and is appropriately known as the Picture House. Indeed, it's where I went to see Quadrophenia amongst other films. Staff have claimed the old production room is the scene of some spooky goings-on. Footsteps and muffled voices have been heard crossing the balcony after closing time. The Surgery, or Noah's Ark as it was once called, is a town centre bar, well known for its regular live music. Phenomena reported include noises from an empty bar and furniture being moved about inexplicably, cold spots in different parts of the building, and mobile phones registering non-existent calls. Another instance involved a technician being physically pushed while apparently alone and crying has been heard in the empty ladies' toilets. It's claimed that there are 3 spirits present, 1 male, 1 female, and that of an animal. Walton Hall, with its tall spiky silhouette and dark brooding appearance, you could be forgiven for mistaking it for some long forgotten Gothic film set. For some years after 1898, the house was still used as a pauper lunatic asylum. During the Second World War it was requisitioned by the army, but the ATS guilds stationed there chose to sleep in tents rather than inside. When I was at North Staff's Poly, it was a students' hall of residence. I may have visited once, but it was a long way out of Stafford itself. The locals in the surrounding area had grown up hearing tales of the Grey Lady who walked at Weston Hall. Indeed, workmen carrying out maintenance during its abandonment period refused to go alone to the hall. Within the days of opening as a hotel in September 1996, it was discovered that the bar area had been mysteriously cleaned each morning, with no cleaning staff on duty. This was doubly strange as the alarms were on. Bishton Hall in Wolseley Bridge, Stafford, is a sprawling mansion with a history dating back to the Domesday Book of 1086. The ghosts and spirits of those who've long since passed dwell within its walls. The most well-known spirit known to haunt Bishton Hall is that of Charlotte Sparrow, a spinster that inherited the home from her father and lived there until her death at 90 years old. A ghostly apparition has been witnessed at the entrance of this foreboding location, though it isn't clear if she's pleased to see you or not. Stafford Castle was built in 1070 but combines a 14th century keep and a later rebuilding in the Gothic Revival style. In the 1960s there were reports of a headless horseman, which was witnessed by the caretaker at the time. There were reports of an apparition of a young girl giggling as she tugs visitors' clothing and then running away from visitors. A poltergeist that slams the doors and throws personal items round is said to be on the loose in the castle, and a frightening image of a headless rider on a coal black steed has been witnessed riding up to the castle and then vanishing. One visitor got spooked by a photo they took in 2005, which showed a dark mass in the shape of a man on the photograph. Walton, the author of the Complete Anglers, 16th century cottage at Shallowford near Stone. A ghost named Miriam makes her presence felt now and again. Nothing is known of her history or connection with the cottage, but many visitors have sensed a presence or a drop in temperature in different parts of the building. In fact, a visiting psychic has detected a female presence, both on downstairs at one end of the building. Stafford witnessed educational equipment start operating by itself spontaneously, with no logical explanation. The surrounding area has reported many sightings, including a man in 17th century costume walking through a hedge and following a long disused footpath before vanishing out of sight. A drowned American World War II pilot is said to haunt the Shropshire Union Canal near Church Eaton in mid-Staffordshire. A betting cottage near Market Drayton has a dark reputation amongst boating people. A shrieking spectre has been seen and heard. A Tiley Middlelock, just beyond Market Drayton, is reported to have its own helpful resident ghost. If you come up in the middle of the night, the ghost will push the lock gates shut behind your boat. But probably the best known and most disturbing phantom associated with the canal is a hideous, black, shaggy coated being said to appear at Double Arch Bridge 39. This is supposedly the ghost of a boatman drowned in the 19th century. A famous sighting of the ghost occurred in 1879 when a labourer was employed to take a cart of luggage from Ranton in Staffordshire to Newport in Shropshire. He was late on his return journey, his horse was tired, and it was about 10 p.m. in the middle of a bleak January night when he arrived at a bridge crossing the canal just outside Norbury. Just as he reached the bridge, he claimed that a strange black creature with enormous eyes sprang out of the shrubs beside the road and landed on the back of the horse. The man tried to push him off with his whip, but then he lashed out. He was horrified to see the whip pass right through the creature. The labourer fell to the ground in fright, and the horse galloped off into the darkness, the thing still clinging to its back. The man was so frightened that he took to his bed for several days, and when he finally went back to the canal, he found the whip just where he's dropped it. In fact, he had met the well-known phantom known as the Monkey Mun. The Four Crosses near Cannock was built in 1636, using old shipping timbers almost 1,000 years ago. Again, this is somewhere I know very well, as it's located on the A5, which as a young man was the main route to the southeast of Shrewsbury. Over the years, several secret passages have been uncovered within the building, and it's believed that many more could not be found. It's believed that many more could be found. One of the most remarkable finds was an old coachman's uniform, preserved perfectly behind a chimney for more than 150 years. The history of the Four Crosses is peppered with intrigue, mystery and tragedy. The most recent death happened in the 1980s when a young boy ran into the road outside and was killed instantly when struck by a passing car. There is also a story of a young baby who died after falling from a table in the 1800s, and reports of several suicides in the building. Reports of the paranormal coming regularly at the Four Crosses from staff and visitors alike. The most common occurrences include children crying, glasses smashing and phantom footsteps. The ladies' toilet appears to be the focal point for paranormal activity, with the apparition of a young girl often seen there. The reports of crying children and shadowy figures are as common daily as they are by night. One particular experience occurred when a manager opened up one morning in 2005. She found 2 flowers crossed on the top of the toilet and assumed someone from the previous night had done it, and went about her business as usual. However, the next time she passed the toilets, a heavy candlestick from the fireplace had been moved and placed in the front door. She was on her own at the time and was understandably freaked out. Other common reports of ghosts in 4 Crosses include an apparition of a Roundhead soldier in the men's toilets, a ragged, unkempt teenage girl in the kitchen, and a man in a long cloak in the car park on rainy nights. Shugborough Hall is the ancestral home of the Earls of Lichfield. Lady Harriet, who died during childbirth, still haunts the building, and a former housekeeper is said to haunt the kitchens. Staff claim that they often hear the rustle of her skirts and have seen her figure pass the window. Now, I have a story about Shugborough Hall. I was working, I had a week's work in London, and my son was young at the time, little more than a baby. And I decided to take my family to London with me, and I booked a London University Hall of Residence in Camden because it was the summer holidays. And I must say it was a wonderful experience. It was a great place to stay, great location, and more than adequate accommodation. But we were passing Shugborough Hall because the M6 was very busy en route to London. And even though it wasn't that far from Manchester where we started off, I felt I could do with a break. And outside Shugborough Hall we spotted, I think it said teas and cakes. So we pulled in, and there was this lovely little shed, well, it's a bit better than a shed, but lovely little place by a lakeside at Shugborough Hall. And I'm pretty certain we were served by the mother of Lord Lichfield, who was chatting away to us. She seemed to do it as, run this little cafe as something to do, and we had quite a charming time. The Royal Forest, Cannock Chase, was formed during the Triassic period. The forest consists of a mixture of woodland, coniferous plantations, open heartland and small lakes. Remains of early industry such as coal mining can be found as well. At Cannock Chase there are sightings of black-eyed children. In fact, there was one in the press only the day before I recorded this. The Lady of the Chase, vicious beasts and even UFOs. The Lady of the Chase is a legend that stretches back decades, with people often seeing the tall, thin apparition of a woman dressed in black. The black emptiness of her eyes accentuated her pale skin. The lady is said to let loose an unearthly scream before vanishing before the eyes of the terrified onlookers. The first Marquis of Anglesey is spotted several times, as Cannock Chase was his favourite hunting ground. Another ghost that is seen is the ghost of an old man with a cane and a wide-brimmed hat. The ghost of a bedraggled woman, a ghostly parachutist, a phantom cyclist have also been reported. Another ghost is that of a young monk who seems lost in the wood. But maybe the most famous are the black-eyed children, a common sight at Cannock Chase, with sightings recorded as well. I wrote as recently as October 2021, but I read of one in September 2023, late September. They're particularly seen at Birches Valley and are said to vanish into thin air. Could these children be the victims of the Staffordshire murderer Raymond Leslie Morris? Their age seems to fit the profile of 5 to 7 years, and Cannock Chase is where Raymond buried his victims' young bodies. As a child, I can remember these murders very, very well. They're ingrained on my mind, more so than the famous Moors murderers of Myra Hindley and Erin Bradley. Probably because of where I lived in Shropshire, we picked up the Midlands television rather than the North West TV, even though some people further south got the North West TV. But yeah, I think that was the reason why I knew much more about it. The Cannock Chase beast is another legend that goes back a long time. This large black cat with red glowing eyes has been seen over 2,000 times. Could this be the same as the sinister werewolf-like creature with fiery red eyes, which stalks Cannock Chase, especially the German war cemetery on Camp Road? The castle ring, also known as the Celtic Fort on Cannock Chase, dates back more than 2,000 years and has some defences intact, forming an eerie enclosed space surrounded by trees. People have reported seeing many creatures, including werewolves, ghost dogs and spirits, and a pigman, a horrifying fusion of a man and a pig. A tall figure in black approached a man, who fled in terror. He later claimed that the man wore a long Victorian overcoat, had red eyes, and a mouthful of teeth that looked like razors. Pye Green Tower was originally built as a part of the UK's emergency communication network in the Cold War. The tower has been a famous sighting of UFOs, including supposed mass encounters. More recently, however, locals have reported encountering a man standing outside trying to flag down a car to give him a lift. Police records have seen people report sightings of strange lights or UFOs over the chase, such as on November the 4th, 2009 at 6:45 p.m, where a bright white blinking light was seen going on and off every 2 or 3 seconds. It apparently stayed for around 4 minutes before disappearing. Blithfield Hall in Rugeley is home of 5 ghosts in total. The Grey Lady has been seen within the building with a set of keys dangling from a belt. The screams of a man falling down a well, which is no longer there, are still heard in the garden. A tall man dressed in black, rubbing a ring, stands in the drawing room, while 2 other ghostly women have been reported. One seen at the other heard as a dress rustles down the corridor. The Britannia Inn in Rugeley, a phantom black dog has been reported to walk around the corridors of the inn. Rugeley Canal is home of the ghost of Christina Collins, the murderer in 1839, who manifests in the early hours of the morning. A variation of the legend says Christina's blood seeps from the steps, even though the current steps are not the ones present in her lifetime. The witness of a more recent sighting of a phantom woman here is said that the entity wore 1950s clothing. The ghost of a mysterious lady has haunted the Red Lion in Wombourne for many years. Now, my first job was in Wombourne, but I don't think I ever visited the Red Lion. When Frank and Lil Ward married to the pub in 1963, they were told that she was a previous landlady who died falling down the cellar steps, but this is debatable. In the 1980s, the ghost was particularly active. Maybe it was my presence there. It started off with a barmaid, Francis, seeing a figure walk past the window in the pub. The window has no modern access and was at least 10 feet from the ground. Shortly afterwards, landlord Lee Thacker briefly saw the apparition of the lady in Victorian-style dress sitting in the lounge area. He had the pub blessed by a local clergy, but it didn't stop the same spectral lady appearing to staff on security cameras one night. She was sitting in the exact same seat where Lee had witnessed her previously. When staff went to investigate in the securely locked lounge, there was nobody there. Himley Hall near Dudley Castle was a royalist stronghold, whilst Birmingham remained fiercely parliamentarian. There is a contemporary record of how and why the soldier met his death. The record comes from the diary written by Richard Simmons, who accompanied the Royalist army and was a fervent supporter of Charles I. Simmons' diary records that on Friday the 16th of May, 1645, the Royalist army, commanded by Charles I, camped one night in the grounds of Himley Hall, en route to the ill-fated Battle of Naseby. He goes on to further report that one soldier was hanged for mutiny after trying to desert while they camped at Himley. The unfortunate man was captured trying to get away and tried on the spot. Justice was swift in those days, and the soldier was hanged from a suitable tree and buried in the grounds before the army departed. His unique spirit, still in uniform, is said to wander the park at night and has been seen on quite a number of occasions, both in the park and crossing the Himley Road, which runs alongside. Drivers on the Himley Road at night have reported having to brake hard after seeing a figure dash across the road straight in front of them. Invariably, this figure is described as wearing knee-length boots. Himley Road shot to fame recently for being the location of the Crooked House pub, which was destroyed by fire after being bought by property developers. A small number of permits are available for all-night fishing in the grounds of the hall around the Great Pool. On occasions, solitary fishermen have realised they're not alone when suddenly startled by a figure described as an old-fashioned soldier moving silently through the trees. Yet another apparition has been seen crossing the Himley Road outside the hall. The ghost is also seen in the hall itself, but very little is known about her. She appears to be a servant, judging by a long plain dress, and is usually seen on the upper floors of the hall. However, she is also seen crossing Himley Road in the direction of the hall. She is seemingly oblivious to any traffic and disappears through the high wooden fence which surrounds the park. Intriguingly, there used to be an old gate right at that point where she passes through the fence. Kinver is well known for its history, not least its famous cave homes. The forest nearby were a favourite hunting ground of King John, the Angevin king who ruled from 1199 to 1216. A local photographer believes he may have captured a ghostly image of an Anglo-Saxon soldier while taking out pictures of the fog. Jamie Brassington was trying out his new camera in the countryside near Kinver when he took a photo of the apparition. He believes the figure's distinctive headgear, similar to the Coppergate-style helmets worn by German soldiers in the Middle Ages, suggests that the ghost is of an Anglo-Saxon soldier.